I think it's maybe even a little more complex than that, and I think that often the police are the criminals. You're dealing with a situation where you have an extremely corrupt police force. Look, they're good cops, and I sympathize with honest policemen in South Africa. They are badly paid. They are paid a pathetic amount of money. Their work is extremely dangerous. You're not dealing with. I don't think it's unique to the Cape Flats. I think that it's any. I think the poor in South Africa are in an incredibly vulnerable position, and I think many of the promises that were made to the poor at the end of the apartheid have never been realized. And the division between the rich and the poor in South Africa has never been greater. So, of course, the biggest problem that South Africa had was apartheid. Apartheid is gone, and everyone's incredibly pleased that it has. But the fact is that what has evolved in the country subsequently is a situation that we're now dealing with, where you have a power elite who enrich themselves, and you have a lot of poor people who are getting poorer. And I don't pretend to have the answers to this. I mean, I think, I don't think that's my job to. But it's a matter of presenting this, perhaps, and showing those realities. And of course, for a long time, writing crime fiction in South Africa seemed like an irrelevant thing to do, because if you had any sense, what you needed to speak about was apartheid, because that was what dominated our country for so many years. So I've always loved crime fiction, I've always read crime fiction, and I've wanted to write crime fiction. But for a long time I knew that it was not, it wasn't something that I felt relevant. Whereas now, with the situation in South Africa, it's possibly the most relevant thing to do. I love genre fiction, I enjoy the process of writing thrillers, but also there is a kind of a moral component to the books that I find interesting. And I guess that my way of making sense of it all is to approach is to confront everybody in my books with some kind of a reckoning. I think that the characters in my books are very amoral, and the universe perhaps is amoral, but I think the books are moral, which maybe means that I am. I don't know what I'm trying to do. But of course it wasn't fucking Abdul. Just some Muslim flight attendant from Cape Town with a black moustache and bad breath. But sweat pricked Billy's forehead, and he caught his hands clutching the armrests as he felt the percussive whump of the explosion smashing into the left side of the BMW, piercing the armor plating and decapitating the Iraqi driver, sending his head into Billy Africa's lap. Abdul had looked up at him, mouth twisted in a smile, like he was about to crack funny about Sinai women and desert donkeys. The force of the blast buckled the chassis of the BMW, bending Billy's door open and allowing a partial target, him. A round smacked his Kevlar vest. The lead car was lost in smoke, but he could see the third car pulled over, the men inside laying down covering fire. He battered Abdul's head away and took a quick look into the rear, checking on the asset, the VIP he was meant to be protecting, the Swede or the Dane or whatever he was. He wasn't. He lay smeared across the seat, a closed coffin case. Billy kicked the door open and went out firing the Czech submachine gun, specially modified for close quarters work. A ricochet bounced off his helmet, leaving his ears ringing. He sprinted to the car behind and almost made it when the second explosion lifted and tumbled him, tearing off his helmet, flak jacket and boots, before flinging him to the ground. When he opened his eyes 4 hours later in the 28th Combat Support Hospital, he was looking at the peeling pink nose of the albino Afrikaner Danny Lombard, the whitest man he had ever seen. There's good news and there's bad news, Lombard said. What's the good news? Your ball bag is still there. And the bad news? Your ass has been fired. Why? Somebody's got to take the blame for losing the asset. Not going to be one of the Yanks. Billy shrugged. The movement made his head throb. I'll talk to the recruiting people back home. He saw the albino's face. What? It got worse. The South Africans had been recruited by a security broker in Cape Town, who had hooked them up with an American outfit in Iraq, Clearwater Tactical. Clearwater paid the broker, who paid them, deposited the money in their bank accounts back home each month. Blutiges Erwachen, which was published as Wake Up Dead in America, is also brings a character from outside. I like having a perspective on the city that a foreign character allows you. And in this book, that character is an ex-model called Roxy Palmer, who has come to Cape Town as many models do in the summer in Cape Town. A lot of international models come in and work in Cape Town. And some of the older ones are looking for work, but they're also looking for rich husbands. And I'd heard a very amusing conversation a few years before I started writing the book between two extremely tall and very beautiful and very blonde models. I was sitting on a yoga mat, and they were kind of rolling up their yoga mats ready to leave the yoga studio, and the one was saying to the other that she's met a really nice guy in Cape Town, and he owns 2 helicopters and an island. And that sort of stuck in my mind, and was the gentleman was doing a line of the basins. You want? Roxy shook her head as she rinsed her hands. She hadn't touched blow in years. Where did you meet him? Sniffing, wiping her nostrils, looking at Roxy in the mirror. Your husband. In a place pretty much like this, Roxy dried her hands and did one of those meaningless things that women do to their hair in front of bathroom mirrors. The whore tried a smile, revealing pre-glasnost dentistry. Maybe I too get lucky. If you can, so I can. Sure, Roxy said. Thought, like fucking hell, charitable mouth. But was she so different from this woman? True, she'd never hooked, but her years as a model had been filled with rich men who had paid for her time and affection in other ways, just as Joe did now. She let all those thoughts in the basket. Who live on the Cape Flats, who've read my books, have said to me, well, firstly, it's actually amazing to read about this reality in a book, and secondly, it's good that you have portrayed the Cape Flats in such a vivid way. But if anything, you've played down the violence and just how tough and savage so much of that society is. So I guess that with my writing, what I do is, but with both of these books, they play out over a couple of days. It's a very compressed time frame. And of course, I'm taking things and heightening. I'm not inventing circumstances. I'm obviously creating characters, and I'm weaving together various storylines. But I'm not creating a particular kind of reality. It is based on stuff that is out there. So sure, it heightens. Sure, in order to make the books function as thrillers, it's my job to make sure that the readers turn the pages. And of course, I want my books to be entertaining. I mean, I'm not up on a pulpit preaching to people, and I deliberately avoid any kind of moralizing in the books. I would rather that the reader spend time with each character, and then at the end of the book come to their own conclusion in terms of where the morality, the moral emphasis should be. So I feel strongly that crime fiction is entertainment and should be entertaining, of course. But I also think that it's the duty of crime fiction, especially in a country like the one I come from, to take the moral temperature of that society. And South Africa is one sick puppy.